In this learning module, we will also learn how to factor trinomials when the leading coefficient is 1. We have previously learned how to multiply binomials. In this example, x plus 1 times x plus 2, the result would be x squared plus 3x plus 2. Now what we're going to learn is how to go from this and work backwards, and so we can find out what the original factors are. So basically, to factor this trinomial, we will reverse the multiplication process and find what factors were multiplied to obtain this result. Guidelines to factoring trinomials when the leading coefficient is 1. To factor a trinomial when the leading coefficient is 1, you must find two numbers whose product is the third term, and also whose sum and difference is the middle term. So for example, in this problem, x squared plus 8x plus 15, it's our job to find the factors of 15, which can be 1 and 3 and 5, and that will be all the factors of 15. Now both of these sets of numbers are two numbers whose product is the third term. The third term is 15. 1 times 5 gives 15, and 3 times 5 gives 15. Now out of these groups of numbers, we need to find out which one, sum or difference, will give us the middle term. If I add or subtract 1 and 15, I will either get 16 or 14. That's not the middle. But if we add together 3 and 5, I will get 8. So that's how I'll know what numbers are going to go inside my binomial. So already I know the only way that I can get the product of x squared is by multiplying x times x. And by listing the factors of 15, I've chosen the combination that actually adds together to give me 8x, which is 3 and 5. Now, you can go back and check this by foiling. X times x gives us x squared. X times 5 gives us 5x. 3 times x gives us 3x. And 3 times 5 gives us 15. If I simplify this, I get x squared plus 8x plus 15, which is the exact problem we started with. So my final answer, my factored answer for this problem would be x plus 3, x plus 5. Now let's take those rules and apply them to some more problems. But first, let's talk about how do I know what signs should go inside of my binomials. So for example, some steps to determine the signs of your binomial factors. Here's my trinomial. I can look at the signs that are inside of my trinomial to determine what signs should go inside my binomial. The first thing that you want to do is look at the sign of 12 is my third term. So the sign of my third term is positive. If it is positive, then you know the signs inside your binomials will be the same. That means the sign here is going to match the sign that's here, all because the sign of my third term is positive. Now, how do I know whether they will both be positives or both be negatives? The way that you determine that is, if the third term is positive, then you need to look at the term of the middle term to determine if both signs will be positive or negative. So I'm going to look at the sign of my middle term to determine whether both signs will be positive or negative. This tells me that both signs inside my binomials be the same, and they happen to both be minus signs. Now again, we still need to factor. The only way I can get y squared is by multiplying y times y. I've already determined the signs, so now it's just a matter of me listing the factors of 12, which is 1 and 12, and 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Now out of these three combinations, which one gives me the middle term of negative 13? Well, obviously 1 and 12 is the only way I can get to 13 by adding or subtracting. So since both signs are negative, it doesn't matter which one I put to be 1 and which one I put for 12. Again, you can FOIL this to determine that it is the correct answer. Let's problem. Let's look at the example x squared plus 8x plus 15. Just like we did earlier, but let's pay attention to the signs this time. Yes, I'm going to factor x squared to be x times x. And again, we're going to look at our signs. This sign is positive, so that means they're going to be the same. Then I need to look to determine what they will be. They will be plus signs. Again, you want to list the factors of 15, 1 and 15, 3 and 5. The only combination that will give me the middle term 8 would be 3 and 5. And again, since they're both plus signs, it doesn't matter where I put the 3 or where I put the 5. But what happens when that third term is not positive? It's negative. Now, if the sign of the third term is negative, that tells us that the signs inside the binomial factors will be opposites. So now, all because that number is negative, it tells me that I'm going to have a binomial with a plus sign and a binomial with a minus sign. Again, I say to myself, what factors give me a squared? Well, a times a gives me a squared. And then I still go back and I list the factors of 20. Some factors of 20 include 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Now, which one of these combinations, 1 and 4 and 5, will give me the middle term of a positive 1? Well, obviously, if I add 20 and 1, I'll get 21. If I subtract, I'll get 19. If I add 2 and 10, I'll get 12. If I subtract, I'll get 8. If I add 4 and 5, I'll get 9. If I subtract, I will get 1. Now it's just a matter of which one of these numbers do I want to be positive and which one do I want to be negative. Well, if my middle term is positive, that means the largest number of my 2 has to be positive in order for the middle number to. So here I'm going to put my 5, and here I will put my 4. Now you can check yourself by multiplying 5 times a, I get 5a. And a times negative 4 gives me negative 4a. When I combine those, I'm left with my positive 1a, which is exactly what's in my middle term. So my answer factored would be a plus 5, a minus 4. Let's just look at a few more. In this first problem, I have y squared plus 7y plus 10. Again, we know that my answer is going to have 2 binomial factors. Let's look at our signs first. This sign tells me they will be the same, and this actually tells me what they will be, so I know I'm going to have a plus and a plus. The only factors that can give me y squared are y times y. Now the only thing left is to list the factors of 10, which are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Which one of these combinations can give me the middle? Obviously 1 and 10 can't give me 7, but 2 and 5 can. Since both binomials have a plus sign inside, it doesn't matter if I put the 2 or the 5 first. Now let's try another one. Y squared minus 13y plus 12. Again, we know our answers are going to be binomial factors. You want to look at the sign of the third term to determine what signs will go inside of your binomials. Since I know they're going to be the same, but what are they going to be? You have to look at the middle term. Since the middle term is negative, that means these are both going to be negative. Again, the only factors that can give you y squared as a product would be y times y. Now we look at the third term. What are the factors of 12? 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Which one of these can give me the middle term of 13? Obviously, it's 1 and 12. And again, since the signs are the same, it doesn't matter which one I put first. In this problem, again, we're going to factor. Let's look at the signs first. This sign here tells me that the signs inside of my binomials are going to be opposite. That means I don't have to look anywhere else. One's going to be plus, one's going to be minus. Again, the only way I can get a squared is by multiplying a times a. And then I want to list the factors of 20. Some factors of 20 include 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Again, since When I add or subtract, the only way I'll get 1a is with 4 and 5. Now it's just up to me to determine which number do I want to be positive and which number do I want to be negative. Since my middle term is positive, that means I want the highest number to be positive too. And that would be my final answer. And let's look at one more just to make sure we got it. Squared minus 4z minus 21. Again, you're going to have two binomial factors. We know that. Since the sign of the third term is negative, that means I'm going to have 1 plus and 1 minus. The only factors that can give me the product of z squared is z times z. And then lastly, I just need to find out what numbers are going to fill in these spots. And we find that out by listing the factors of 21, which are 1 and 21 and 7 and the middle. Which one of these can give me the middle term of negative 4? Obviously, it's 7 and 3. Now, which number do I want to be positive and which number do I want to be negative? Well, that has to do with my middle term. Since my middle term is negative, that means the largest number is going to be negative. Again, we can check ourselves just to make sure we're doing it right. 3 times z will give me 3z. Z times negative 7 will give me negative 7z. When I combine those, I get a negative 4z. That is the same thing that's inside of my trinomial. That's how I know I did it right. So my final answer would be z plus 3 times z minus 8.